What if Robb Stark allied with House Tyrell and married Margaery? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. As Catelyn and her small retinue return to Riverrun, their minds are swirling with questions of what to do now. While Robb continues his campaign in the Westerlands, they face multiple problems at once. Chief among these issues is what to do with the Ironborn, who have taken over Winterfell, and their control of the seas makes it impossible to dislodge without heavy losses. The next is how to gather new allies, is what Catelyn wishes to do. Her sister Lysa has remained uninterested in joining the war. She had initially wished to be treated by one of the Baratheons. Renly seemed promising, if somewhat inexperienced, but his death makes that impossible. And Stannis, while he now has an army and the experience of war, the memory of that shadowy creature murdering Renly still chills her spine. But as they draw closer to Riverrun, she's surprised by the sight that greeted her. While she expected to see the banners of the River Lords, as Edmure had called them back, what she didn't expect were the banners of House Tyrell. But their golden rose flies just outside the gates. When they approach, she finds Margaery and Loras Tyrell within the keep, chatting with Edmure. The young queen stands up and bows her head respectfully.
Lady Catelyn, my apologies for arriving uninvited, but we wished to discuss something with you.
Queen Margaery, I admit I am surprised, but your presence is welcomed here at Riverrun. What is it that you wish to discuss?
Our house believes that it is in our best interests to cooperate with Robb Stark.
Really? I admit I'm surprised, given how our last meeting went. I hope you are not making this on a whim.
Believe me, we have thought long and hard about it.
After retreating to Bitterbridge with their remaining men, the two thought about what their best options were moving forward. One clear thing was that they could not ally with Stannis. Though the king might pardon them, they know that Stannis holds enmity for them here, and their siege at Storm's End. At best, they could hope to simply retain their position in the Reach. Unlike his brother, Stannis was incorruptible, and would never be won over by them. They considered joining the Lannisters as well, but with Stannis in a position to strike at King's Landing and their forces tied up in the west, their days seemed numbered. They decided that their best option was to join forces with Robb Stark, who has a large army and whose star is yet to reach its peak. As they begin planning this alliance, the Tyrells lay out their plans. They propose a marriage alliance between Margaery and Robb Stark, uniting their houses. Mace already sent a raven to Robb, who is riding back to discuss the matter, leaving command of his army to the Blackfish. For the next few days, the Tyrell delegation remains in Riverrun, with Margaery winning over the household with her charm. However, there is some tension due to Loras wishing for Brienne to be executed for the murder of Renly, and due to the existing marriage pact between Robb and House Frey. The latter does little to dissuade them. Loras points out that the Frey oath was made under duress. They demanded it while failing to do their feudal responsibilities of answering Edmure's call to arms. If they were truly loyal vassals, they would be glad to accept the other marriage pacts, such as those with Arya. The former is a more difficult problem to solve, but Catelyn manages to point out some issues in Loras's claim that shed some doubt on what he thinks happened. Her own story of a shadow monster is difficult to swallow, though. By the time Robb returns, they've at least agreed to leave the matter be. More importantly, they point out how allying with them can solve their problems. They can use the Red Wine fleet to bypass Moat Cailin and meet the Ironborn at sea. This also gives them the strength to take on the Lannisters and rebuild the Riverlands. It is a tempting offer, and Robb sees the potential.
With the forces of the Reach, we can launch a full-scale invasion of the Westerlands. We could take Lannisport, the Golden Tooth, or maybe even Castle Rock. Then we can force Tywin out into battle and make peace with Stannis.
Make peace? Your grace and your willingness to treat your foes are commendable, but I don't think there will be a chance to make peace with Stannis.
Why is that? We share the same foe. No man distrusts Tywin Lannister more than King Stannis.
That may be true, but what happens when Lord Tywin is gone? He thinks little better of the Starks or Tyrells. To him, we will simply be usurpers, and when has Stannis ever been known to see reason? I fear the only chance at peace is total victory. Are you suggesting that we go to war against Stannis? That is madness. He is one of the Seven Kingdoms' most gifted commanders, and even if we were to prevail, who do you intend to sit on the Iron Throne?
Why not you, your grace?
Me? What claim do I have to the throne?
As strong a claim as Renly and Stannis. Renly is the younger brother, yet men flocked to his side because they believed him to be the best choice. Stannis, meanwhile, built his claim on the idea that Joffrey and his siblings are not Robert's children. A convenient tale, is it not?
Stannis may not be the forgiving sort, but he is not the lying sort either. If he claims that, he did not imagine it.
Perhaps he may truly believe it. It may even be true. But it did not stop men from choosing you and Renly, and even Balon Greyjoy over him.
And perhaps consider what you have claimed. You say that this being that slew Renly bore the face of Stannis. This could only have come from some vile sorcery, and it makes him a kinslayer. Ask yourself, is that something you truly wish to join forces with?
Catelyn pauses and considers what they have just said. The memory of that incident continues to replay in her mind, along with what Stannis had told her during their parley. She saw what he was willing to do to her brother. She realized Stannis would be willing to do that to Robb as well. Robb goes silent, but Margaery takes this silence as an opportunity to pounce.
Besides, you are simply taking the throne for the good of the realm, but it needs not be permanent. Your father was named Protector of the Realm. Think of this as you following his legacy. If you find that ruling does not suit you, there is no reason for you not to pass it on to someone worthy.
The mother and son share a look, a quiet understanding crossing their faces as they realize what must be done. Although neither of them likes it, the answer seems clear, and working with the Tyrells is their best chance. An alliance is forged between them, sealed by a marriage pact. Unsurprisingly, this enrages the Freys, who withdraw their forces, but it matters little, since the Starks gain the Tyrell army. However, it will take days for them to arrive, marching from Highgarden. It will take days before the first riders show up. In the meantime, Lord Tywin has begun his march west, trying to force his way into the Westerlands. With Robb there, he takes command of the army, though he largely keeps Edmure's original battle plan. Soon enough, the Lannister army arrives at the Red Fork, but finds themselves facing off against the Tully host, consisting of houses from all across the Riverlands. Though outnumbered, they hold the defensive advantage. Soon enough, probing strikes begin up and down the river, but these are met with strong defenses of bowmen, caltrops, artillery, and disciplined men-at-arms. For the first few days, any incursions are stopped or quickly repulsed. However, these are just the opening strikes. By the fourth day, Tywin decides to use strength and launches an attack against all the southern forces. Instead of a few dozen men, hundreds come streaming through the river. They batter their way along the water, braving the arrows, stones, and crossbow bolts of the rivermen. Those who make it towards the western bank are given no rest and immediately locked into combat with waiting knights and men-at-arms. The fighting is brutal, and soon the fork earns its name, as it runs red with blood while sanctions are dammed up with bodies. Among these battles, Sir Gregor comes rushing across the river, leading a daring strike. The momentum and surprise of this assault manages to break through and capture a beachhead. Both sides rush reinforcements across to capitalize on this advantage, but Tywin is faster, and Adam Marbrand leads a squadron of heavy horses. These men batter through and scatter the exhausted defenses. After days of fighting, a crossing is finally forced. Tywin wastes no time in exploiting this opportunity. His men stream through the captured fjords and rush west. Rather than fighting the depleted rivermen, Tywin focuses his attention on the Westerlands, the true goal of this battle. This allows Edmure to quickly rally his forces. He soon sends word to Robb and Riverrun, telling him everything has gone according to plan. Edmure assembles his reserves and tells them to prepare the attack. Tywin marches his forces south of Riverrun, towards the Golden Tooth. But as he approaches the castle, a strange sight greets him. Atop its walls is the direwolf of House Stark, and beside it, the golden rose of House Tyrell. Mace Tyrell holds the castle, but as Tywin realizes this too late, his scouts return, detecting movement from their southern flank. An army of riverboats has appeared from the Red Fork, deploying nearly 10,000 reachmen. Suddenly, they realize they've been outflanked, but it's too late. The thunder of hooves fills the air as Riverland cavalry come galloping forward. The untouched reserves of Hedmere, whom he kept back for this moment. They are accompanied by a mass of footmen from the Reach, commanded by Loras Tyrell. Tywin and Kevin quickly form up their defenses with Adam Marbrand in the mountain, rushing forward to try and buy them some time. The clash of the cavalry is a whirlwind of action as the Westermen whirl and weave around, charging at the Riverlords before retreating and attacking again. Gregor stands in the midst of this, his great sword sweeping back and forth as he cuts men down left and right. Meanwhile, Adam Marbrand disrupts their formation, preventing them from surrounding the Lannister army as it forms up. However, as the infantry reach them and provide their support, the battle shifts once again. Adam retreats while Gregor continues to fight. Amidst the chaos, two figures rush at him, Brienne of Tarth and Loras Tyrell. Roaring, the mountain sweeps his greatsword at them, but Brienne catches it and surprisingly holds it in place with her sword. This allows Loras to gallop in and swing his Morning Star at Gregor's side. Roaring, the mountain turns to face him, but Brienne is at him again, raining down an attack on him. These strikes barely seem to bother the big knight, though he shoves them off and continues to attack. Their weapons clash against one another, and both take advantage of any opportunity to get in close and strike, keeping him occupied to prevent him from fully committing to a single opponent. Suddenly, Brienne leaps from her horse and tackles the knight. The momentum is enough to send them tumbling to the ground. Loras takes this opportunity to smash his shield against his helmeted face before sliding in a dirk. Meanwhile, the sudden attack of the Westermen does allow Tywin to form up his defenses. The first charge is blunted, and the next two fail as well. For a moment, it seems like this gamble has failed, and they still lack the strength to stop Tywin. But suddenly, the gates of the Golden Tooth open, and Robb, Mace, and about 500 warriors come streaming out. The rearguard Tywin organized to blunt their attack tries to hold them back, but pressed from all sides, the pressure begins to grow. Soon enough, the rest of the Tyrell Tully army begins to gain ground, driving them back into the corner as they finish off the rest of Tywin's army. The first point of failure comes in the rearguard, where Robb's battle guard hacks through the spearmen and rushes through their ranks. Panic begins to spread as he rushes straight toward Tywin's command center. Seeing this, the old lion tries to gallop off, leaving his guards to hold them back. But rather than chase after him, he rushes into the center's rear, adding to the chaos. As more men join him, the Lannister army breaks, with thousands die as they try to force their way through the Golden Tooth, or escape back toward the Red Fork, and thousands more surrender or escape. Tywin manages to ride off to safety, finding shelter in a holdfast, but he is murdered by several broken men. The coalition recovers his head soon after, completing his victory as the Lannister army ceases to be a threat. Meanwhile, in the Blackwater, the battle continues uninterrupted, as word has not spread about their alliance or the recent battle. Instead, Stannis leads his forces to King's Landing. His men batter the gates down as the Blackwater River burns around them. Despite their best efforts, they encounter spirited resistance from Tyrion Lannister, holding them back. They buy an entire day, but soon the defenses begin to crack. Although the defenders of King's Landing launch sortie after sortie, these are all beaten back. And during one assault, the attackers manage to reach up to the gate and begin battering it down. As the men start to flow into the city, a new report arrives that another army was spotted along the Blackwater. Suddenly, trumpets blare, and the crowned stag of House Baratheon appear, accompanied by the Golden Rose and striding hunter of House Tarly. The remnants of Renly's army at Bitterbridge were rallied under Randyll Tarly, and after receiving word from his liege lord about their alliance, he rides north to confront Stannis. Now his army, nearly 50,000 strong, comes barreling hard and takes Stannis at the rear. The chaos spreads instantly as men within the city look at one another in confusion, wondering what happened. Meanwhile, those outside can only scream in terror at the sudden reversal. From the besiegers, they now find themselves besieged. They are pinned against the Tyrell army in the walls, just as the strangest thing appears. A figure in green armor and an antlered helmet appears. To them, it is as if the dead had come back to life as they see the ghost of Renly. Panic soon spreads across their ranks as the men break, scrambling to escape to the river, while the defenders rally and fight with renewed vigor. But their excitement is premature, as the new army turns its spear on them as well. Instead of freeing them, they simply replace one attacker with another. Within hours, King's Landing has fallen, with Joffrey, Cersei, and Tyrion dead or captured, while Stannis is killed trying to rally his men, leaving no claimants on the throne. Days later, Robb rides into the city, greeted by the cheers of his new allies. The Reachmen and the small folk of the city welcome his arrival as a conquering hero. Word of his success spreads, and many of the remaining houses have wasted no time in pledging fealty to him. A grand ceremony is organized in the Red Keep. Though Robb was already crowned king in the north, this will officially mark him as a king of the Seven Kingdoms. During this ceremony, one house is conveniently absent. House Frey refuses to even send a delegation in protest of their broken marriage pact. Robb wishes to make amends with them and already sent apologies and other proposals to make things right. But old Walder Frey refuses to be swayed or forgive this slight.
Husband, you worry too much about the opinion of these toll takers. Yes, it is unfortunate what had to be done, but you offered them fair compensation and they refused. Whatever happens to them is their fault and only theirs.
It's not that simple, Margaery. It is not just some disagreement. It is my honor at stake. My father once said a man without honor is a man without anything.
A fine sentiment for a lord, but you are no longer the Lord of Winterfell. You are a king.
And you would make me a man without honor?
I would make you a king. As ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, you should be above such petty squabbles.
That sounds much like how Joffrey thinks of things.
You are no Joffrey, Your Grace. Think of it like this. The Freys have exploited their position of power, as they did when they demanded such a marriage pact, as do a dozen houses. The Florents, the Greyjoys, and Lannisters, they're all the same. And now all of them wish for your position. It is your job to remind them that you are above them. Remind them that you sit on the throne because you are their king, and they should not get ideas. They serve the crown, not the other way around.
Robb nods his head and listens to what she says. Her silver tongue works its charm, slowly winning Robb over and convincing him of the rightness of his cause. He thanks her for this advice. But as the coronation ends, Robb must soon plan his next campaign. Although this ceremony named him ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, only 4 were truly under his control in practice. The Vale, Dorne, and the Iron Islands have not declared for him and must be brought to heel. As promised, Robb gains access to the Red Wine Fleet, which he uses to strike back at the Ironborn, contesting their coastal holdings in the north. And they couldn't choose a better time, as shortly after, Balon Greyjoy dies, prompting the Iron Fleet to withdraw. Meanwhile, Robb manages to beat back an assault on the wall by the wildlings. He takes back Moat Cailin, the Stony Shore, and later Winterfell, which was captured by Theon Greyjoy. Meanwhile, a larger fleet is gathered from the remnants of the Westerland fleet, the Redwynes, and the Royal Fleet for an invasion of the Iron Islands. As the captains are in chaos trying to figure out who should lead them, Paxter Redwyn's larger galleys surprise them at the harbor and crush them. The Iron Islands are forced to kneel before them once again, accepting their place as part of the Seven Kingdoms. But while Robb is leading the armies, Margaery and Catelyn spearhead diplomatic efforts. The easiest of these is with the Martells at Sunspear. All they require are the heads of Lord Tywin and Sir Gregor to pacify them. Lady Lysa requires a bit more convincing, and the two instead switch tactics, focusing on her bannermen. While the Vale Lords are fiercely loyal to her, they are frustrated by her refusal to take part in the war, and this adds more pressure on her to pledge allegiance to the crown. With the Lannisters defeated, she is less able to protest without winning the ire of the people and obeying. After almost a year of fighting, the War of the Five Kingdoms now draws to a close. Robb Stark now sits on the Iron Throne and begins to set the realm right. However, he has his work cut out for him as he looks over the problems to address. The biggest of them is rebuilding the Riverlands from the Lannisters' destruction. Here the Tyrells prove useful, providing food and money to help the people. These flow from Highgarden, Old Town, and Mander. Rebuilding isn't the only expense Robb must worry about. He soon learns of the Crown's debts as well, and those owed to groups like the Lannisters and the various free cities. Though he cancels the debts to the Lannisters due to their destruction of the Riverlands, he also does not have access to their gold mines any further. Suddenly, he realizes just how influential the Tyrells become. Their wealth, by being untouched by the war, places them in a strong position to bargain. Robb initially expects that they would help him out of duty, but it is clear southern politics work differently than in the north. All of their help comes with strings attached. With Robb, the Tyrells see someone inexperienced in ruling, especially with southern politics trying to dominate him so that the Tyrells can become the true power behind the throne. That begins by gaining concessions. Robb finds himself having to give concession after concession to them. First, he must name Loras as a member of the Kingsguard. Next, to name Paxter Redwyne as Master of Ships, and Randall Tarley as Master of Law. Mace even suggests himself as Hand of the King, though Robb manages to work around that and instead names Waymon Manderly for that position. The first piece of advice the Old Lord gives Robb is to gather allies. He cannot depend solely on the Tyrells for what he does. If he is to avoid being a puppet, he must have bannermen loyal to him. He also manages to name Oberyn Martell as Master of Whispers, and Jason Mallister as Master of Coin. Under Waymon Manderly's advice, he also names several prominent River Lords as advisory positions within the small council, and legitimizes Eric Storm as the Lord of the Stormlands, ensuring that they remain loyal to Robb. Another major problem is that they encounter the rise of the Sparrows. These followers of the faith soon swarm the city in response to the destruction suffered at the hands of the High Lords. They demand action to be taken to ensure nothing like this happens in the future. Among these include forcing lords to swear holy oaths to renounce war. the destruction of buildings they consider sinful, and a dedicated order of knights to protect the septums in the future. Although Robb has made efforts to rebuild the Riverlands, this is not enough, especially due to Robb being a follower of the old gods. Their leader, the High Sparrow, even goes as far as demanding that Robb convert to the faith of the Seven for them to recognize him. Understandably, this causes quite an uproar with the Northmen and Robb's retinue, who are incensed by these demands. Waymon and Margaery both do their best to reduce this High Sparrow's influence. As both are devout worshippers of the Seven, both are held in higher regard, but not without criticism. Waymon for his gluttony and Margaery for her house's role in the war. Both continue to try and persuade him to change his tune, but Margaery has one trick up her sleeve and visits him one day in the Sept of Baelor.
High Sparrow, I understand your concerns, but you must understand the Crown is doing everything it can.
The Crown is the highest authority of the land. It is legal. No, it has a moral duty to serve the people. That is why the Seven bless the king, instilling him with the divine right to rule. But those are meaningless if it cannot act.
And acting we are. Already over 100 spots in the Riverlands have been rebuilt. We are feeding the hungry and more. We are fulfilling the request of the Seven.
And yet more must still be done. Your work has not gone unnoticed, child. The Seven smile upon it. And yet I cannot help but be disquieted at your king. How can you claim to represent the Seven when your king does not even believe in the new gods? Even as the warrior granted him victory, and the father judged his cause just. It has led me to question whether your actions are truly sincere.
I assure you, we are true to the mission of the Seven. It is just that...
What is it, child?
You must understand, my husband has spent 15 years in the north, the land where the faith influence is alien. He cannot be changed in a day. Though I have insisted on showing him the power of the Seven through my house's efforts, it's difficult to change overnight. The north is a savage land, and he knows little more about refined acts like diplomacy. It is why he relies on House Tyrell and other southern members. But I assure you that our children will become devout followers of the faith if you will allow us the chance to rule.
Ah, child, you walk a difficult path. I understand. Perhaps chiding is not the correct method. After all, the Seven have many ways of showing themselves. Very well. If you can ensure your children will grow up to be devout believers, and you continue these efforts, then perhaps we may work together. In time, we may even make a believer of this barbarian king of ours.
The High Sparrow gathers around a small sept in the Riverlands, looking over the gathered small folk. Many were sworn to the river lords of this region, but while their liege lords may feel loyal to their king, the same is not true for the normal people.
We stand in unprecedented times, my brothers. The realm has undergone turbulence, and none have suffered more than the good common folk such as ourselves. First, we saw the death of King Robert, and then the rise of Joffrey the Monstrous, which has led to nothing but war, as Robb Stark battled the lions. All of this only ended when he made common cause with the Roses of Highgarden and defeated Stannis and the Lannisters at the Blackwater to claim the Iron Throne. And yet, while they claim the war is over, the land remains broken. You may ask yourselves, what is the cause of this suffering? But I say the answer cannot be more obvious.
He raises his hand to the sky as the people all gasp and look up at him.
This divine punishment from the heavens for our faith and the faith of the Seven Kingdoms has begun to waver. Just look at those who have called themselves king. One was a drunk who allowed corruption to thrive, and after him, a cruel monster. And now all that remains are those who worship foreign gods. Whether it was Stannis with his fire demon, or Balon Greyjoy with his great sea monster. Even now, our King Robb prostrates himself, not to the Seven, but upon the ancient trees, with unnatural faces carved upon them.
The small folk look at each other, muttering amongst themselves as they think of the unnatural faces carved into the trees. Though rare, The weirwoods were still seen from time to time in the south.
But not all hope is lost, for our queen is devout and pious. While her husband loses himself in his pagan worship, she remains steadfast in the teachings of the new gods. Chaste as the maiden and kind as the mother, she is our hope for the future, and we must follow her example.
The small folk around him all cheer these words on as the High Sparrow concludes his sermon. But this is just one of many he does across the Seven Kingdoms, traveling not just to the Riverlands, but also the Vale, Westerlands, Reach, and Stormlands. But he takes it a step further. Though Margaery begs for time, the High Sparrow has a more immediate solution. There can be no worship without icons. Though Margaery might be immune from criticism, Robb is still a pagan follower. By increasing her own influence, Margaery has diminished her kings. Robb himself does not know how to respond. He refuses to denounce the religion his father had practiced, especially as his father was beheaded right at the steps of the holiest site in the Seven Kingdoms. Though he marks several announcements urging peace and tolerance, these only go so far. Violence begins to escalate in the kingdom. These aren't the major wars the Seven Kingdoms just experienced, but smaller isolated acts of destruction. Northmen are harassed on the streets when they journey south. Foreigners are looked on with distrust, and religious icons are smashed. One of the most brazen attacks is when a group of sparrows breaks into Raventree Hall and attempts to cut their weirwood tree down. Though Lord Blackwood puts a stop to this, he is furious and knows that Janos Bracken is behind it. War is only prevented by Robb, who urges him to calm down, but warns that any further acts of violence against the trees are punishable by death. Margaery tries to discourage these suggestions, saying that they will only lead to more suffering, and suggests lesser punishments. However, the Northmen, even those who follow the faith of the Seven, are outraged. Rather than discourage this, the High Sparrow is infuriated, seeing this as heresy that Robb would compare a simple tree to holy icons similar to those of the new gods. Many sparrows begin to chop down these ancient trees. What few weirwood trees they find are destroyed, but it isn't just sparrows. Westerlords and Stormlanders see the opportunity to retaliate against the Starks and Tyrells, who see this as betraying the Baratheon dynasty. While the Northmen and their followers try to preserve as many as they can, putting countless sparrows and rebellious smallfolk to death, it is not enough. All the while, Margaery urges Robb to calm down, telling him to avoid escalating the war any further. She tries to meet with the High Sparrow, urging him to cease these efforts, but he is adamant and says that this defiance can go no longer. But it isn't just the trees themselves that suffer. Cracks begin to show in the realm. With these divisions, the crown is losing its ability to control its people. The king finds it difficult to deal with it. Things were much easier in the north, not just because they shared his faith, but now the Stark name matters much less here, especially given the treason accusations that hang over their heads. Now he finds himself having to rely on Margaery for more of his public events, letting her be the face of the realm while he remains on the sidelines. She manages to calm things down, having sparrows and the worst offenders punished, but she cannot stop them all. All the while, she urges Robb to convert, even in name only, to at least weaken the sparrow's support. However, the king cannot bring himself to do it, not when they continue to desecrate his gods, not when the High Sparrow refuses to compromise. This causes the Tyrells no small amount of frustration, as this leaves them trying to control the sparrow on their own. With the north facing increasing persecution, Robb cannot always bring them down to help. More importantly, there are a few reports on growing trouble at the Wall, as some claim they spot White Walkers just beyond the realm. Margaery isn't the only one who notices and takes advantage of this. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen notices this chaos and sees an opportunity. While they had united the realm, she freed Slaver's Bay and now finds an opportunity to attack. Together with her husband, Aegon VI, they sail to the west, landing on the Stepstones where they begin probing attacks along the coast of the Seven Kingdoms. Even with their dragons, it is a difficult battle, and they lose several ships. However, they hear of tensions within the Reach, and Stormlands provide an opportunity. Many lesser lords who sided with Stannis and fled east found themselves in the Golden Company. They are enticed with the opportunity to return home and offer to lead them there. House Fell, Morgan, and remnants of the Florents are among those who offer their aid. Some Reachmen are also tired of Margaery's alliance with the Faith, seeing it as a threat to their rule as the Sparrows meddle in their affairs. The Targaryen forces make their landing near the marshes, split into two columns, one in the Stormlands and the other in the Reach. to capture strongholds along the coast and pushing deeper inland. The Marcher lords, once sworn to the Tyrells and Baratheons, fractures under the pressure, with some lords defecting to Aegon VI in hope of securing new power, while others remain loyal to Highgarden. Meanwhile, religious zealots from both sides continue to pour into the conflict. The Sparrows wage holy war against Targaryen loyalists and those they deem heretics. However, other sects see the Targaryens as their chance to restore their faith in the crown, and eagerly urge their followers to join Daenerys and Aegon. Margaery's family gathers their banners and rides south to quell this threat. While not a gifted commander, he still has the loyalty of House Tarly and can use their forces to quell the rebellion. He marches to the castle, one by one, to try and halt their advance. However, the dragons halt this advance, burning through his first army and forcing him to retreat, barely saving himself from the chaos. In the Stormlands, Robb Stark wages his relentless campaign. As he and his Northmen march through the lands, they see they are far from welcome there, being regarded as little better than the invaders, but focuses his forces entirely on driving the Targaryens from the Stormlands. But he proves himself to be a brilliant tactician. Many young knights and lordlings rally to his cause, and together he wins a string of victories. Though the Golden Company are fierce, they lack the dragons and are simply another army. Robb's military campaign shines through, as rather than face them directly, he circles the Stormlands, targeting their coastal holdings and those along the King's Road, to prevent them from gathering or reinforcing. When they finally clash near the Rainwood, Robb has the better of it. The fighting is some of the fiercest he's encountered, having to contend with the discipline of the Golden Company. But under the arrow storm of their archers, he manages to reach their defensive position, atop a ridge. His knights dismount and advance on foot, with locked shields, keeping their movements slow and disciplined, so when they arrive, they are more than prepared to fight hand to hand. This fighting is fierce, and though the Golden Company is better trained, the Royalists have the numbers, and it swings back and forth. At several points, the Royalists manage to gain the upper hand and secure a foothold, only to be driven back. However, Robb continues to rally his men, and even manages to defeat an attempted flanking maneuver when Greywind hears the men trying to sneak up behind them and has his men beat it back. Eventually, his numbers win the day, and the Golden Company are dislodged from their position. Sensing his emotional turmoil, Daenerys crafts a trap. Rather than pulling her dragons back to reinforce Aegon's forces in the Stormlands, she makes a bold, sacrilegious move. She orders the Isle of Faces to be burned. The weirwood grove there, one of the holiest sites of the old gods, is set ablaze. The skies turn red with fire and ash as Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion reduce the ancient trees to cinders. Even the sparrows cheer this on and join in. The act is a direct challenge, a provocation designed to draw Robb into battle on her terms. Upon hearing this, Robb is thrown into a fury. He rides right to the coast of the Stormlands, slaughtering every sellsword and sparrow who his army comes across in retaliation. Rather than attack Daenerys directly, he instead turns his attention to the Stepstones, where they make his base, and begin launching a brutal campaign. Their camps and strongholds are taken there, but this time Robb doesn't just capture them. He pays destruction for destruction, burning their camps and belongings, their ships, and their wealth. Meanwhile, this gives the Tyrells a chance to solidify their rule over the Seven Kingdoms. With Robb gone, someone must take lead, and though Waymond Manderly tries to keep things together, Mace and the other Southerners gain increasing influence within the city. While the Unsullied are unfazed by this and continue their campaign in the Reach, many sellswords are horrified. Even the Golden Company, with its vaunted discipline, cannot stand to watch their wealth being destroyed and urge them to return. Daenerys and her dragons are the first to return, but they find Robb using the labyrinthian cave system of the islands to evade aerial attacks, launching ambushes and nighttime raids that whittle down the Targaryen forces. For a brief moment, it seems as if Robb's vengeance might turn the tide of the war. But then, the true enemy arrives. The destruction of the weirwood trees matters little to them, but in reality, it has a greater effect than they realize. These were not only sacred, they were tied to the magic of the old gods. The destruction can lead to their magic weakening, including the spells weaved into the wall, and soon, the White Walkers learn about this and begin their assault. As the men of the Night's Watch wake up one day, they find themselves greeted by the sight of the dead, far more than they ever expected. They pour out of the haunted forest and begin their assault. Urgent word is sent to Robb Stark in the south, begging him for reinforcements. The North rushes as many troops as they can to this front, trying to reinforce the Night's Watch. By the time Robb receives word, he is still fighting in the Stepstones, with some success, but he is unable to take down the dragons or secure a permanent victory. Instead, his forces are getting bogged down with the endless fighting, requiring constant reinforcements. By now, depression is starting to set in with him and his men. Many of them question what they are still fighting for, and while some are disgusted with the sacrilege of the Targaryens, some wish to return home. Soon enough, they see several Manderly ships arrive. At first, they think it is reinforcements there to help them secure their rule, but to their surprise, Waymond Manderly appears with grim news. The news weighs heavily on Robb. He looks at the sea around him, and the bleak islands he sits on at the edge of the world, and questions what he is doing. That, and a dozen more questions run through his mind, but there is only one answer he can think of. This is not his place, and he should not be here. But the situation is complex. With his forces in the Stepstones, he is still under the shadow of the dragon, and it will be difficult to withdraw his forces immediately. That is, unless he can come to peace terms with them. To Daenerys' surprise, he offers to discuss terms and withdraw from the Stepstones entirely. Confused, Daenerys suspects a trick and initially refuses, but Robb presses her and even suggests they meet to negotiate terms. Robb sails back to the mainland accompanied by a few advisors to discuss these terms. They meet at Sunspear, a land untouched by where Daenerys, Aegon, and his queen all arrive. The fighting on the mainland continues to rage, and all sides are fighting to make war.
I will speak to all of you. There is trouble in the north. The wall is failing, and a foe far greater than any we've encountered threatens to break down our door. We must stand together if Westeros is to survive. The dead have come for us. The Night's Watch holds them back, but they struggle. If we do not act now, the north will fall. And you expect us to simply abandon our war for the throne to fight shadows and legends? If you believe this is legend, then you are a fool. I have spent too long consumed by this war, by vengeance. But none of it matters if we're all dead. I will not let my people be slaughtered while we fight amongst ourselves like children.
And what do you propose, Stark?
Peace. For now. We must unite. We can settle our differences later, but if we do not put aside our quarrels now, we will all be nothing more than frozen corpses. So you expect us to simply march north to your homeland with our armies? A tad convenient for you, is it not?
I will not have my husband's honor questioned by the likes of you, Pretender.
Pretender? The dragons have ruled for hundreds of years. You are simply a rose who has forgotten who allowed you to bloom.
The Tyrells have bloomed long without the dragons, just as the realm has survived without them.
And what a job you've done. When we arrived, the Faith was close to overthrowing your king. How do we know that this is not some ploy for you to secure the Iron Throne? The Iron Throne? I no longer care for it. Take it. Play your games. Stab each other in the back over a damn chair if that's what you want. My father died because of Southern politics. My men have bled for it, and my homeland suffers for it. No more. I renounce my claim if that's what it will take. I will fight for the North. For Westeros. Not for a crown.
Husband, you cannot mean to renounce your claim. Think of what you are doing.
I am. Remember what you told me. Should I not like ruling, I can always find someone else. Well, I find that I have no stomach for this.
You would give up everything for this war?
Aye. If what you say is true, then we will lend our forces. Fine. But the moment this war is over, you can fight for your throne. I will be in the north, ensuring my people live to see another day.
The White Walkers strike first at Eastwatch by the Sea. A terrible cracking sound echoes as the wall's ancient magic splinters. As its foundation weakens, an ice storm kicks up, leaving them perfectly vulnerable to an attack. The White Walkers ride atop midnight spiders, each as large as a horse, and with long ropes tied to their spindly legs, letting whites climb up after them. Jon Snow and the Night's Watch receive some hasty reinforcements and try to hold them back. As the first spiders reach the top, they are greeted by a barrage of arrows. One rears its legs back, but the Lord Commander slashes its rear legs and sends it tumbling over the edge. However, the rest of the wall is having less luck as more of the creatures reach the top. Their tiny foothold grows by the second. Jon fights relentlessly. Longclaw slices through the icy flesh of the whites, but for everyone he slays, more rise. The Night King himself advances, a spear of glacial ice in his hand, and hurls it into the base. The entire structure shudders at the very foundation as cracks begin to fall. Suddenly, the ground a few feet away from Jon gives way, and men are sent screaming to their deaths. The Night King offers no reprieve as he prepares to do this once again. Jon orders everyone off the wall. Word is sent to the other castles, ordering them to retreat and to make for Winterfell. Some lords try to resist, and others fall back with them. The Dreadfort, once an impenetrable fortress, is taken in a single night. The bodies of its defenders rise by dawn, now part of the Night King's ever-growing horde. Carhold is next, its gates frozen solid and shattered. Those who did not flee in time are consumed by the darkness, their screams echoing into nothingness. Deepwood Motte is evacuated, and just as the Glover brothers sail off, they can hear the forest howling, thick with the undead. Those by the coast flee to White Harbor or Bear Island, while those inland escape to Winterfell. They receive some hopeful news that the coalition is on its way up. The coalition army hastily marches north, gathering forces as they advance. Robb Stark takes command of this force. Whatever issues they have with him as king, none can fault his generalship. Here he is commander, decisive and brave. He rallies the scattered men together, organizing them into a disciplined force. But dire news greets them. Winterfell is on the verge of collapse, besieged by the Night King's forces. Robb recalls his father's words. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. He had left Sansa to hold it, but she is inexperienced in war, and the castle itself is crumbling beneath the onslaught. Worse still, the destruction of their weirwoods, the old god's presence, has faded. The Night King, no longer bound by their ancient magics, seems even stronger. The storm of ice and death rages over the north. The Night King stands at the head of this monstrous legion, his icy gaze fixed upon Winterfell as his undead army encircles the castle. The defenders fight bravely, being led by some of the northern lords as Sansa comforts the women and children. Despite their best efforts, the castle becomes increasingly untenable. Every day the Whites swarm the walls, first with their undead beasts that rip and tear into the soldiers, and then their undead humans, and finally, the White Walkers, great spiders. All the while, the cold seeps into their bones, sapping their strength. Then, fire answers ice. A roar splits the frozen air as Drogon descends from the stormy skies, his black wings cutting through the darkness like a blade alongside Daenerys. Behind her, Rhaegal and Viserion unleash torrents of dragonfire, carving a burning path toward Winterfell. The flames engulf Whites by the thousands, momentarily pushing back the tide of the undead. With the dragons above, Robb leads the cavalry in a desperate charge. The knights scream into the night, their swords and lances cutting through the horde. Northern riders, Vale Knights, and Reach bannermen ride alongside them, carving a narrow escape route for the remaining people in Winterfell. Under the cover of dragonfire, Sansa Stark leads the last Winterfell's people southward, retreating towards safety as the battle rages on. As she escapes, Robb wheels and prepares for another charge to buy them some time. The last of those to escape are Jon and his Night's Watchmen, but as Robb orders them to get behind them, they feel it. The cold returns, and with it, the Night King himself. The ground trembles beneath their charge, the clash of steel and the cries of men echoing through the battlefield. At the head of the attack, Robb and Aegon VI ride side by side, their blades cutting through the Whites as they carve a path toward the Night King. The Night King does not move. Robb and Aegon reach him. With all their might, they strike. Valyrian steel and dragonglass meet ancient ice. The Night King falters. A wound opens upon his chest, and a strange, unearthly scream escapes his lips, but he does not shatter. Instead, he raises a hand and unleashes a surge of raw, icy power, sending two warriors hurtling back. The charge falters. The dead press forward once more, their unholy strength overwhelming the scattering forces of the living. The only thing that stops them from getting mobbed is Daenerys, who strafes the battlefield once more.
Fall back!
The two look at one another and fall back. The people are out, but Winterfell has fallen. All they can do is rush back and hope to regroup with the remaining of their forces. Throughout the day, Robb wheels his horses around and tries to ram into the undead, smashing into their ranks to buy his group some time to escape. Sometimes the dead are right on top of them, and they barely escape by the skin of their teeth. However, by the time they reach Barrowtown, Daenerys and her forces have arrived. The tattered remnants of Robb and Aegon's cavalry retreat behind the tight ranks of the Unsullied, standing behind the disciplined Westerosi men-at-arms and sellswords that create a wall of shields and swords, holding the line as Robb and Jon recover from their failed attack. The battle grinds into a brutal stalemate. The forces of the living barely hold back the unending tide of the dead. Jon, Robb, and Aegon ride up and down the lines, trying to rally their men and hold up. But even as they fight, they can feel the immense cold brewing over them as the Night King approaches. Above them, Daenerys unleashes another burst of fire, burning the whites around him. But the Night King remains unaffected and marches forward, his icy sword gleaming dangerously. The three raise their swords and rush at him, and yet the Night King moves like a nightmare, his movements precise and aggressive, never failing to halt their attacks. With each strike, he forces them back. Cursing, Aegon rushes in, Blackfire in hand. He ducks under one slash and then drives his sword across his knee. Although it unsteadies him, the Night King does not fall, and instead grabs him by the throat. Frost begins to form around his neck as the Night King prepares to drive his sword into him. Jon moves at the last moment and hacks at his hand, chipping away at the ice and forcing him to retreat. The Night King turns to face him, his sword flashing out and sending Jon back. It cuts a line across his chest, but Robb takes his attention and comes from a third side. The three try to swarm him, preventing him from targeting any one of them, and wearing the Night King down. With each time they clash, a few more of their attacks get through, and cracks begin to show in the Night King's armor. Bit by bit, he begins to tire. Robb sees this and rushes forward, pulling his longsword back as he aims a cut across his waist, but then the Night King's sword flashes and drives right into his stomach. The two scream as Robb glances down, staring at the sword as it drives deeper. As it comes down, he falls to the ground. Jon screams and rushes at the Night King. His fury is like nothing ever before, and he rains down attacks on him while Aegon comes in lock, hacking at his body. Their unexpected ferocity takes the Night King off guard, and at last, one strike hits him on the neck and severs his head from his body. Before his body even hits the ground, Jon rushes over to see his brother.
Robb, you will be okay. Lying was never our strong suit, Jon. It's why we make such shit politicians. Don't be upset, though. I'm in the north, and I fought for it. They will remember this. If nothing else, you made things right here, and we shall not forget that. Not with you leading them. I've failed the north, but you will do better than me. Lead them well.
Jon's eyes widen, but before he can protest, he sees his brother's eyes glazing over and simply offers a nod. As the battlefield clears, he begins rebuilding. The armies of the Seven Kingdom return home. Having heard of Robb's death, Daenerys and Aegon offer their condolences, and Jon assures them that he will not attempt to claim the Iron Throne. Instead, Jon satisfies himself with ruling the North and caring for his nephew. Although saddened to give up queenship, and even more to see Robb dead, Margaery decides the same. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.